And we are live. JT here, and welcome to the huddle. The huddle is where I sit down with successful people from the world of sport and coaching. It's to learn more about their journey to greatness. Why do I have these conversations? Because success always leaves clues. I want to take a moment to thank you, whether you are watching on YouTube or on Facebook, or whether you're listening to the audio on the podcast. Thank you so much for being here with me and my special guest today. And here's my friendly reminder to you. The mind is like a parachute. It works best when it's wide open. So my challenge to you is to go all in on this conversation, to remove any distractions and get laser focused on the here and the now. And I guarantee you, you will gain a valuable nugget of wisdom that will not only help you succeed at sport, but more importantly, in the game of life. Been looking forward to my conversation with my special guest today. Before we hit record, I was mentioning to him that, came across some of the beautiful work that he's putting out in the world and just resonated. It was just someone I'm like, he gets it. It was just, yes, basketball is his vehicle, but he's sharing these greater life lessons that can help, anyone perform better in the game of life. My guest in the huddle today is known on Instagram as the Take Flight Coach. My guest in the huddle today is Garry Linton. How are you today, brother?
I'm doing all right. Thank you for having me and much appreciated. I'm happy to be here, man. It sounds like it's going to be a great conversation. Again, thank you for extending the invitation to me. So I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely, brother. And before we get kicked off, pun intended, I'm going to take a moment to count my blessings. And for me, this is a daily practice. Some days I do it better than others, but I do find the days where I'm most intentional or I'm most consistent counting my blessings. I do find those days are filled with a little more love, joy, and peace. And I'm a big believer, biggest blessing you can give anyone is your time and energy. So I just want to thank you again for blessing us with some of your time and energy here today, brother.
Absolutely. Anytime, man. Definitely appreciate it. Looking forward to it.
Okay. Okay. So one of the first things that we like to do in the huddle is to remind others and ourselves that life is a game and games are supposed to be fun. I had a coaching colleague and a great friend who would always remind us that, hey, we all have these things that make us unique and different. So our responsibility is to celebrate that. So I'm curious, what's an interesting fact that maybe a lot of people don't know about you that you'd be open to sharing with our community today?
Um, let's see. That's actually wow, that's a great way to start off the podcast. Um, I think that one of the biggest things is you know when it comes to coaching and things like that, a lot of it tends to be um for lack of better terms selfish in ways. For me, I like to think that I'm very selfless. I like to make sure that everybody's taken care of, and then I can take care of myself. So if we're talking about facts about life and something that a lot of people might not know is just I'm selfless in a lot of ways. So
Hmm. It's interesting you share that. So I'm curious from your perspective, do you think, great leaders, coaches, that they sort of dance this line between doing the selfless work, but then also sort of, that sort of selfish because they know it feels good to like help and serve others. Like, do you think
yeah,
that that's a dance that a lot of great coaches have?
yeah, I think so. More so, some more than others. When we talk about the selfless part and the selfish part,
Mhm.
I think that selfish part is the tough part that kind of confuses some people a lot of times. So,
Mhm.
um, when you talk about selfish and just kind of, for me, fulfilling others is my selfishness, right?
Mhm.
So in others that might be making sure that whatever they're doing is helping them get to the next level or whatever the case may be. So
Mhm.
I think when you talk about, the differences and kind of those leaders, I think that's where the great leaders differ. The great ones are kind of in it for those reasons of making sure that they're fulfilling others.
Mhm.
And then the ones that are kind of, left behind a little bit, or maybe those are that have kind of those priorities out of line.
Mm. No, it's love that again, powerful reminder of the importance of alignment, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and bigger purpose. And as we often say in sport, playing for something bigger than ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So I'm curious. So sport has obviously played an important role for you in your life.
Mm-hmm.
You're still involved in it today as a high quality coach. So I'm curious, what is a life lesson that you've taken from sport? And again, I know we could probably dissect that and we could probably go on for a couple hours of all the life lessons we've taken from sport. But what's
Yeah.
that one life lesson that you find you've taken from sport that you still find yourself applying in other areas of your life today?
So I think one of the biggest ones that I think applies is and I've said this many times before, but it's giving without expectation. And I think in sport, a lot of times we're looking to give with the expectation that something is going to be given back to us.
Mhm.
And then when that doesn't come back to us full circle, then we're kind of disappointed by that, right? So if we go into it and we give without that expectation of getting something in return, the universe has a funny way of just kind of making things come back to you.
Mhm.
So that's one of the things that one I've heard Gary V say it, but I've also seen it in sports. You know what I mean? Just going out there and making sure that you're able to give all the things that you're able to do in the game, and all the things that are supposed to come with that will come back to you. But you can't go in there just expecting to get it just because you did something.
Mhm. It's interesting as you share that, it's an important reminder on the law of cause and effect, right? That when
Mm-hmm.
we give, right, our best energy and enthusiasm, something good is going to happen. We're just not really sure where it's going to happen, who
Yep.
it's going to come from. And
Yeah, yeah.
it's kind of like a boomerang.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. So a lot of times, and I think that's where, just in life, I think that's where we get a lot of um where a lot of people kind of they could do better.
Mhm.
Just because going back to that is like when you give something to somebody, you're giving it because you want to give it to them. You want them to have it. You want them to have that energy. You want them to feel that. Um, but again, we're just looking, especially in today's society, we're looking to get something in return or in favor of, and we just can't look at it that way.
Mhm. So it's interesting as you share that, it sounds like it's the difference between giving with expectation, sort of trading versus just, giving without expectation. That's the true essence of giving.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So we're not, and that's the thing, right? So many times we're looking to trade something. And I think that's where again a lot of uh coaches may go wrong, a lot of
Mhm.
players may go wrong, and just in general, a lot of whether it's at the workplace and your bosses or your managers or supervisor, whatever that may be, I think that's where a lot of us may go wrong. Is it's not a trade-off that we should be looking to get.
Mhm.
And if we do it that way, then it's not going to come back to you with meaning. But if you go the opposite way and just do it without the expectation that this person right in front of me is going to give something back to me in return, then we can live a better life, I think.
Absolutely. So I'm curious, these lessons right around, the importance of law of cause and effect, like just give without any expectation. Was that something you always understood? Was there a great coach, mentor, teacher, parent that really helped you to understand like the power of like just willingly giving?
Yeah, no, it's not something that I always had. I was that person that once was looking for that trade-off, that was looking for, okay, if I scratch your back, then you scratch my back type of thing. But again, as life kind of evolves and you kind of mature and you grow, you learn these things that you get results from,
Mhm.
and then you start to see and understand it a little bit better. I think again, I go back to, I heard Gary Vee say it, and it just was one of those things where it was like, hey, uh, let me try it, and when you try it, one, it feels good, but then at the other end of that, you start to see life changing a little bit, and then when you see that, it's like, oh, maybe this does have some merit to it.
Mhm.
So that was really what it was about. Is I heard it. Uh, hey, let me give it a try, and you start to see it in other aspects of life as well.
Mhm.
In particular, in the coaching instance, when I kind of took that mindset, I started to see things change for me too. So
Mhm.
it just stuck with me.
Yeah. It's interesting, and it's almost sort of that idea of, your eyes became more wide open, right? Or you're like
Mm-hmm.
that giraffe that's behind the bush, and all of a sudden the neck grows, and you start to see further out down the plains
Mm-hmm.
of Savannah, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
I'm curious, was there a moment where, if you look back, hindsight, they often say hindsight's 2020, where you look back, go, oh, that was the moment where you're like, okay, like I'm onto something here. Like you're starting to understand sort of like the rules of the game of life.
Yeah, yeah. So there was actually two. I mean, there was two things, and it's kind of like I guess I see the question as twofold, right?
Yeah.
So career wise, there was a moment where um, I reached out to a mailing list of 150 people or whatever, however many it was. It was up there. Um, and I offered them a free session, and not only the free session for them, but I offered five of their teammates the same free session. So, if you think about it, that's a lot of people that could potentially be getting a free lesson.
Mhm.
And nobody responded to it. So that was um, it was kind of that moment that was like, man, maybe this isn't meant for me type of thing.
Mm.
And after I try to kind of like apply that, I heard give without expectation. I applied it. And instead of just inviting people, I just did it. I said, hey, I knew a coach in the area. I said, hey, I'm going to go, and why don't we just put together a clinic? They were looking for fundraising at the time. I said, hey, I'd love to help you. I could donate, I could give you the $50, but let's just put on this clinic, and maybe, you'll get $1,000. Who knows?
Mhm.
We did that. A lot of people showed up, and it was, again, one of those moments that was just like, maybe I'm going about this the wrong way.
Mhm.
At that moment, I just gave it with not with the expectation that something would come from it, but it was a bigger purpose, right? I can only give you so much, but if we do it this way, then there's a possibility that you can gain 10 times, 20 times as much as I can actually give you at the time. So it worked out that way.
Mm.
Um, so that was kind of like the first part of that question, and then the second part of the question is there was a moment where I was kind of with a player at a time. They were going through a rough time. It didn't really dawn on me at that moment. We kind of set aside and kind of talked about it, and without going into too much detail, they were really struggling. They were going through a hard time, and it was very close to the very end of, um, you know, their life journey, I guess you could say. And we were able to turn that around. And I think at that moment, it was kind of like a moment where I said, "Wait a second, this isn't basketball. This is life."
Mhm.
So with that, we kind of have to turn everything. It turned everything around for me in how I approached the training and what I was doing.
Mhm. I appreciate you sharing, and again,
Absolutely.
being so open and honest and candid with it. And it's interesting that, as you shared there, a couple themes popped up. It was interesting how just that simple of idea of, coming together with people, right? Like really like losing yourself in the service of others, right? Whether it was, hey, I can give you this $50, or I can, offer my gifts, my talents, my abilities, and
Yeah.
at a potential clinic and we get to serve more people. Or even if it was just that, someone, in your life is going through a challenging time, like just being there for them,
Hmm.
probably in their proverbial darkest moments. Like it's interesting how just losing yourself and just being all in on them really helped shine light on the power of just give your time, your energy.
Yeah. Yeah. No, those two moments definitely changed a lot for me.
Mm,
Not to diminish anything else that has kind of occurred in life, but
mhm,
as far as a career, those two moments have really kind of opened my eyes to what is possible and
mm,
um, how much is needed from others,
mm,
in times that you don't know. So
mm.
it definitely helped.
It's interesting that you use the word possible too. I was, in preparation, I was looking, and I love how you put in there, possibles on your Instagram, right? It's on, sort of I'm the possible coach.
Yeah.
I'm curious, how is that lesson, around this idea of, giving and living in possibility? How has that shaped, your life, either personally, professionally, as you've continued to walk the journey from those two, instances?
Yeah. So it doesn't come without struggle at times in terms of when you're as giving as you are, sometimes you there's a lot of people that will take advantage of that, right?
Mhm.
So the struggle becomes, how do you maintain this energy of being a giver and wanting to help people in that way, but at the same time not be taken advantage of. So for me, that's kind of been, when we talk about shaping me as a person, it's become a balance of that, still wanting to be a giver and still wanting to make those changes for others and being selfless, but also understanding that some people are just going to go beyond that,
Mhm.
and just managing some of that, if that makes sense.
Yes, it makes complete sense. Similar to you, again, love just like the ability to help and support and serve others and add value. And for me, for many years, it was I would give to other people, and then my wife, my kids, my loved ones would get what's ever left over at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And it was interesting how in the last year and a half, I've actually had to tap into my wife. She's kind of she has the gift of discernment. She
Hmm.
has an ability to look at both sides of the coin. So
Yeah.
before any opportunity, personally, professionally, I ask her, so what do we think about this? And then from that allows, like, she sort of like keeps me in check and sort of helps
Yeah.
make
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
No, we're one in the same, one in the same.
Okay. Okay. So I'm curious, why basketball? Like what about basketball has been your vehicle to help, as you said, help people to live in possibility and help sort of bring their greatness to the surface?
Yeah, so for me, it was just, when I was younger, my parents, like most parents, as at that time at least, gave their kids the opportunity to play everything, right? So I played baseball, I played soccer, I played basketball. It was just something about basketball that kind of molded me, and kind of stuck with me. Um, some of my greatest and darkest times have come with basketball. So the connection is not just a positive one. It also has some negative attached to it. But I think that's the if we think about the overall life lesson, I guess, or the life theme,
Mhm.
is that it's always up and down, right? You're gonna have your highs, you're gonna have your lows. And basketball for me was that. So unlike other sports, that is what kind of took me through those things, and I was accepting of that. I remember when I was younger, all of the things that came with me playing basketball, the good positive things. I was able to play on this team or go with this club, or do these things and meet so many different people, that those were the highs that came with it. But I also remember, basketball was the place where, my dad took me to kind of break down that, hey, mom and dad aren't doing so well, and we're going to go our separate ways. So for me, that has been the attachment with basketball, and I think that it carries through in the work that I do today. So
Mhm.
that's kind of where it all kind of attached for me.
Mm. It's interesting as you share that, right? Like you sort of, highlight like the sport, what's the blessings of it, the potential
Mm-hmm.
barriers, right? The positive, the negative, and all those things. And it's all wrapped into one beautiful journey.
Yeah,
I'm curious, again, observing kind of what you share, the messages you share. It's deeper than basketball. It's deeper than
of
sport.
course.
Is part of the way you share a message. Like I feel like there's like a bit of an educator in you that sort of just wants people to stop and think. And there's a deeper life lesson. Some will see it, some won't. But yeah, I'm curious.
Of
Is
course.
is that it? Is helping to navigate some of the challenges and struggles?
Yeah. So I think that, the educator part of me just comes from um, navigating, well, specifically for basketball, just kind of navigating it myself, right? So as I was going through it with my kids and navigating the journey, I understand how it feels to not feel like you have somebody in your corner. I understand how it feels to wonder if you're doing the right thing. I understand how it feels to go through these things and be taken advantage of from a money standpoint. So,
Mhm.
when I speak and I try to give these lessons and things like that, it's really coming from the things that I've experienced in my own journey throughout all of this.
Mhm.
So I think that's where that educator piece comes from. It's just kind of, hey, I didn't have it. I want somebody else to kind of learn from my mistakes or my successes. So that's where it all comes from.
Mm. It's interesting. Again, it sounds like you're a big learner. You're very much like a growth mind, that sort of beginner's mind, that student's mind. You're kind of always learning. It's interesting. As you shared that, sort of remember this. Ed Milet, the speaker in the podcast, where he talked about this idea of like your best position to serve the person you once were. So it
Mm-hmm.
sounds like for you, you navigating those, kind of seeing the ins and outs, what's working, what's not. It's like you're just trying to shed light so you can help other parents, other families make sort of an informed decision.
100%. Yeah. And all of it's not just, my experiences. I have, you know, I've been blessed to work with hundreds of different um, parents and players on their path. And
Mhm.
as they navigate these experiences too, I learned from their experiences.
Yeah.
So, as you said, life is just kind of like this. And it wasn't always this way for me, but just learning and trying to evolve and grow. Right. So that as you kind of change that mindset
Mhm.
and kind of like be open to learning something different, it kind of opens the pathway to so many more things. And that's, again, going back to just, hey, this is what I saw, this is what I did, this is what I would have done differently. All of those things just become something valuable for somebody, and I just
Mhm.
don't always know who that somebody is.
Um, I'd be curious, like you've worked, like you were saying, with hundreds of families, and it's interesting, like seeing just a wide range, right, of who you work with.
Mm-hmm.
Are, obviously different life stages, so they're at different points, they're making different decisions, but do you find sort of what they're looking for, why they're coming to you? Is it very different, or would you say like it's, it typically falls under, the same kind of problems they're experiencing navigating their basketball journey?
I mean, you do have your experiences that are different, or those struggles that are different for each family, but I
Yeah.
would say the most common theme that comes across my desk is the theme of confidence. Um, and that's one of the biggest struggles that most of the kids are that come through are having. And that may just be that varies from so many different things. But now it's just a matter of, okay, what is it coming from? And what is the solution to figuring it out? But all of that is addressed in just learning the skill. And then as you start to unravel some of those different things, then you'll start to learn more about them, and then you start to learn more of the struggle and more of the solutions that are needed. So it may come across first as confidence, but then you start to navigate these different pathways or things that come along as they grow. Growth brings new problems, so we we got to navigate it together.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. It's a great reminder, sort of pulling the, proverbial layers of the onion back, right?
Yeah,
The
yeah.
confidence, right? Okay, okay. Um, I'm curious, like, do you think the whole confidence piece, because that's something definitely, sort of whatever, however you want to package it, whether it's a mental health conversation, whether it's a wellness, whether it's a confidence issue, it
Mhm.
seems like athletes at all different levels are willing to have that conversation. Like it's something that's, a lot more out there. Do you think that things have changed? Like from your perspective, do you think things have drastically changed, or do you think that just new and different conversations are being had in 2024?
Well, I think that the problems are different. So in a way, things have changed, right? So if we go back and we think about some of the adversities that we may have faced when we were younger,
Mhm.
those same adversities may not be applicable today, but these kids have new problems that they're trying to navigate. So I would say, to answer that, I would say that things have changed. You know, um, I can give the life lessons to my children of the things that I've learned growing up,
Mhm.
which may help them to a certain extent, but now they have added layers that they also have to navigate. So yeah, things have changed, and we have to kind of understand that. Obviously we have, and I'm sure you've heard it before, but we've had these questions about, these kids being lazy, and these kids, not wanting to work, and these kids, being, um, you know, being troubled by, or living by the likes and the comments. Those are new problems. Those are things that we just didn't experience. So we have to address them in the now, and not as we handled, the equivalent of what would have been likes or comments in the past.
Mm. No, it's I love that you share that. It's a great reminder on, the power of perspective, right? And
Mm-hmm.
understanding that every generation, I think it's probably passed down, right? Every generation thinks their generation was, you know, was grittier, was more resilient, was a little tougher than the current generation. So
Yeah.
it's a great reminder. But why it resonates with me is even before we hopped on for this conversation, I found myself, okay, I knew I had 10 minutes before our conversation. And
Mm-hmm.
then I was like, okay, but I can go respond to this email. And I found myself about to reach for my phone. And then I was like, you know what? You need like 3 minutes to like just close your eyes and breathe. And went lay
Yeah.
down in my daughter's bed. So it's interesting how even that pull, we didn't have all these tools that young people have today, but I still felt that pull and had to consciously be like, no, go lay
Yeah.
down.
Yep. Yeah. No, that's exactly what it is. And even as adults, we can try to address it, and we can try to navigate it the way that we would navigate it. But at the end of the day, we're not them. So we
Yeah.
got to kind of have to step back and understand, from their perspective of what it may feel like and what they may be going through.
Mhm. So I'm curious, part of, the huddle, a lot of the people that listen to our conversations are high quality coaches such as yourself, right? That are constantly learning and growing and trying to do things better, right? So they can better help and serve, the
Mm-hmm.
young people they coach or the other coaches they work with. So I'm curious, you have let's say you have a young high quality athlete come to you and you can tell they're struggling, with their confidence. They might not go, again, I know it's not one size fits all approach, but
Yeah.
if you know that they're coming there, is there something that you typically do just to maybe do your best to sort of open the conversation so you can sort of start to get the root of what's going on?
Yeah. So for me, the I guess the objective when they first come in with those kind of issues is allowing them to get comfortable, right? Is allowing them the opportunity to feel like, hey, this is a place that is different. This is a place that um, I can kind of let my guard down. This is a place where, you know, I can start to enjoy not only the game, but enjoy the process again. So I think that's the first step that I like to take with kids. And some of that is more or less just again not being so structured in the way that um, we teach, kind of getting down to their level and just allowing them to kind of again feel comfortable on what they're doing and how we're going about it. um, that's the first piece that I think is the most important, because once you have that, then you have their trust in a way. And
Mhm.
now talking to them about what they need to do differently or what they need to do with a specific skill. Now
Mhm.
that you have their trust, now that they can kind of start to build on everything else. So
Mhm.
again, that's the first step in the way that I approach it.
Yeah. So it sounds, and again, this is where, I'm starting to connect the dots. Steve Jobs said you can only connect the dots looking backwards. It's interesting, like if when I was looking at some of your stuff, it seems like very much play, like the things you do coaching, from a basketball skill perspective, like they look fun, like they look different, like it doesn't fit always the mold. Like it looks like, has that been a big play? Like just get them moving, having fun, like you said, loving the process again and challenging them in a loving
Yeah,
way.
absolutely. So, I mean, everyone that comes in, and I'm sure many can attest to it, but one of the first things that we kind of go through and tell them is we have to we have to be uncomfortable. We have to get comfortable with the uncomfortable, right? So that means that you're going to have to put yourself in situations that you're not necessarily um, going to be perfect. You're not necessarily going to do them right, but you have to be okay with that, right?
Mhm.
So it's almost kind of like a re-education process, right? Because in most of the other places that they're going to, and even in the games, they're taught that they have to be perfect, right? They have to have all of these skills and they're supposed to be done to a T. So when we go through it, it's really getting them comfortable or re-educating them on the process of you don't know everything. You're not going to do this right. For lack of better terms, you're gonna suck when you first do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the thing is you have to be okay with that. Like
Mhm.
you have to find a sense of joy in knowing that. And that's another theme that we kind of teach them is you have to find joy in the failures. You have to find joy in the mistakes. You have to find joy in the process. And if you can do that and you can understand like, hey, maybe I can't do this specific skill today, and you can look at it from a sense of joy of I'm I'm going to get this one day. I'm going to
Yeah.
get this. It kind of flips the failure part on its head,
Mhm.
right? We can get comfortable with that failing part because we know at the end of it, at some point, I'm hopefully going to get this, and the joy becomes looking forward to that day, not
Mhm.
necessarily stuck on the part of I suck because I can't do this.
Mhm. So it's interesting as you share that, a couple words jumped up, and I think about mastery, right? Like that's the goal we all want to, but it's understanding that mastery is going to be a lifelong journey. You'll never have
Sure,
it perfect. But it
sure,
sounds like again, you really have this underlying theme of like be okay, willing to take risks and to like fall
absolutely,
down. Like that seems like
absolutely.
that is getting them okay taking risks.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. And that's one of the toughest things that I feel that these kids have today, is that they're not given the opportunity to they're not given the opportunity to fail, and they're not given the opportunity to take risks.
Hmm.
Especially in youth sports, it becomes in my opinion, because a lot of times we're so wrapped up in the result of winning or dominance, that kids become scared or frightened by the idea of trying something in fear of the consequence that comes with it. So if we just allow them the opportunity to kind of open up and try things without the harsh consequences, then one, I think they're going to enjoy it more, but
Hmm.
also they have the opportunity to learn. And real quick, I'll share this thought process, or this theory that I have. And many people say that the problem with today's sports is, well, specifically basketball, is that the kids don't play pickup like they used to. We used to go out and we play pickup. Well, in reality, they are playing quote unquote pickup. They're playing a lot of it. It's just organized. And when we played, we had the opportunity to figure out what worked and what didn't work. There was nobody in the stands or nobody telling us to do something specific. If I did something in a pickup game and I got blocked, by the third time I did that same thing, I had the idea that, hey, I can't, I can't do this because
Yeah.
I'm going to get blocked. So we had to kind of the opportunity to learn on the fly.
Mm.
And nowadays, the kid don't have that opportunity because of the consequences that come with it. So the learning part of it is gone.
Mm.
So that's just kind of my thought process on what we're seeing today.
Mm. Um, it's interesting your take. Again, I know your sports, basketball, mine's football, but it was interesting that you're right. Like, to a degree, we're not allowing our young people to sort of figure it out, right?
Yeah,
Like, to give them the opportunity that they're going to make some mistakes, there's going to be some bumps in the road, but we got to sort of just trust that. It's kind of like touching the stove, right? You'll touch it once and then you'll figure it out, right? So,
absolutely. Yeah, yes. We sometimes we put the expectation on kids to know the things that the 30-year-old or 40-year-old me knows,
yeah,
and we're trying to pass it down to them as if they're supposed to know it already.
yeah.
And I think that's one of the biggest things, or biggest struggles that we have as adults, as coaches, as trainers, is um, you know, we know it because we've went through it, we've experienced it. We have to allow them the same opportunity.
Mhm. So I'm curious, like, do you think that that's something that the world of, we'll call it high performance sport, is that something that you think we can get back to that point where we allow sort of a bit more of that free play, we give that? Or do you think we're so far down the road where, everything's structured, it's, yeah, I'm curious your
Yeah.
perspective.
So I think it's difficult to get there at this point, only because, well, I think there's a couple things. Um, I mean, the biggest one is the amount of money that's involved in it. That makes it um, a big reason that change is difficult.
Mhm.
But the other part of that is our perspective on winning as elders and adults and coaches and trainers. Our perspective on winning is kind of goes back to what we were just saying, right? It's self-serving in a way. We want to win, and we believe that winning means success, and winning teaches us everything, and we got to go back to somehow. And I don't think that we can. I'd like to hope that we could, but going back to the fact that we learn more in failure than we do in success.
Mhm. Mhm.
So to answer the question, no, I don't
Yeah.
think that we can get back
Yeah.
there. But that doesn't mean as individuals, myself or yourself,
Mhm.
we can't shape and mold um, the younger people or the families in a way that they can find some of that individually.
Yeah.
um it's just harder as a group. It's going to be difficult.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's as you're describing it, it's almost like that. It's like the runaway train, the bullet train that's like left the station, it's moving.
Yeah.
And then how, what can you do to slow it down? And as you say that, I think back to some of the conversations, that I have serving as in my role, as a director of culture and sport. It's like just this idea of even giving people the opportunity, like, what do you want? Like, what's most important to you and your loved ones? Like, I find even if you can just give people an opportunity, just like, what's most important to you? Even giving them that gift, whether they take it, whether their mind's open to it, I find even just asking that simple question can sometimes just allow people to know that you're in their corner, that when they want to have a conversation, you're there for
Yeah,
them.
absolutely. Absolutely. I listened to a podcast with Pittsburgh Steelers coach Mike Tomlin,
Yeah.
and he talks about the idea of leadership and being open to intimacy with his players, in terms of, I'm going to tell you that I'm open to having the conversations. I'm going to be open to helping you through your struggles, but not everybody wants that
Yeah.
intimacy. So going through that and just kind of helping players and families and understand that, hey, I'm here, I'm open, I'm going to give you that opportunity to be there for you.
Mhm.
Whether you take it or not is kind of up to you.
As you share that, I guess the question I have is that, you were talking earlier about this idea of, building these golden bridges of trust that as,
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, all you can do is you can do your best to build, a golden bridge of trust. Whether someone chooses to walk halfway and meet you there, that's up to
Yeah.
them.
Yep.
But at least they know if they genuinely feel like you have their best interests at heart, that's really what's in your control.
Yeah. And again, as a parent navigating some of this, I think that's some of the biggest struggle is, how do we understand, or how do we value, rate, or um, how do we just know who has our best interest? You know,
Hmm.
and I'd like to think that's some of what I'm helping parents figure out.
Hmm.
But you don't always know the answer to that question, so you're left with that feeling of, am I doing the right thing? Am I trusting the right people? Am I listening to the right people? So
Yeah.
it's still one of those things that's going to be a struggle, and unfortunately sometimes we just have to, as I heard someone say, we got to go through it to grow through it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Hmm. As you share that, it's a good reminder for even us as caring adults, whether it's coaches, leaders, parents, that hey, we're in the process of figuring out this game of life too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome, awesome. So I'm curious, but I want to be mindful of your time and energy.
No, you're
Um,
good. You're good.
I'm curious, you know, I know that this has sparked some high quality coach, some parent out there to just maybe start to look at this game of life, this sport differently. What is the best way for people to learn more about you, to see what you're growing out and what you're helping to create in this world?
Um, that's a good question. Just say it for me one more time, just a
Yeah.
little bit slower. Let me kind of grasp the idea.
Okay. Um, one of the things of how we got connected was you shared something. I think it was the Gilbert Arenas quote. It was a video of Gilbert Arenas talking about why parents
Yeah.
should just encourage their kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, if people want to learn more about how to better support, their kids, the student athletes they work with, the young people that they're blessed to guide and mentor? What is the best way where people can learn more about you? They can see kind of how you're supporting people. Yeah. How can people learn
So
more about you?
for me personally, there's a couple things that I'm trying to do. And one of those is obviously spread message through Instagram, since that's been the biggest following, or it's been the most where people have been the most receptive. Um, but now I'm working on building a place where they can actually, um, kind of like a guide or a resource for all of that. I recently released an app that, called the Basketball Experience, which is kind of like a hub for all of that. And it's the beginning part of just allowing people to kind of, have the resources to learn, to be educated, to kind of what the signs they should be looking out for in different situations. So for me, that's one of the things that they can do is again, Instagram is a great place, but, um, really the app is kind of the start and the building of that, a much bigger thing for me, I think.
Awesome. Well, I'll be sure to share out your social media handle in the description, whether on
Sure.
YouTube, whether on the podcast, or just share it out there. And again, it's enriching my life. It's challenging me to look in new and different ways. So I just want to share more of it because it's been very impactful in my life.
Yeah, no problem. And again, if there's one thing that we can take away from all of this, is just, um, we just as adults, we just have to open our minds to, um, we just have to be open minded. Many of us are using our experiences to kind of close out or close off what is available to us.
Mhm.
And we just have to open our minds and not be so quick to kind of judge. Social media has made it very difficult for that part. I know a lot of times in just my specific industry, we share 12 seconds of what we've gone through in an hour, and people are very quick to judge on, well, why are you teaching them that, or why are you doing it that way? Not really getting the full scope of the hour of what we may
Mhm.
have talked about. There was a moment that kind of opened my eyes a lot when, I saw a clip of a gentleman who was, and this was maybe, this was a few years back, but he was on the train going to, wherever he was going, but he was on the train and he was shaving on the train. And someone happened to video this gentleman, and the comments below it were just, "Oh my gosh, this guy is crazy." Da da da. And in reality, I don't want to. I believe what basically came of that was this gentleman was on the way to speak to his family for the first time in years after being homeless. So though the what he had to do in order make himself presentable became a laughing joke to everybody else on the outside, when I believe if everybody just took the opportunity to understand the story behind it, then it would have been less judgmental,
Mhm.
as they go through that. So especially in this day of age, I say this to say we have to allow ourselves to be open minded to the possibilities, be open minded to the situations, be open minded to, hey, maybe there, it's just possible, just maybe there's another way to do what I've been able to do. Do you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Um, I think that's an overall theme that we can all learn from all of what we're doing.
Mm. It's interesting as you share that is, the question that comes up, like, how could I look at this situation, this person in a different light, right?
Yeah,
How could I shift my perspective? And it's easier said than done, but it's interesting how if you
absolutely.
shift your perspective, Maybe,
Yeah,
maybe we just see the world differently, see life differently.
absolutely. Yeah, it goes back to the, is the glass half full or half empty conversation. And I think that many times we just kind of have to take a step back as adults, as humans, and just kind of think and not just be so judgmental. Like
Mm,
there could be, there's it's a very high possibility that there could be a different story based around whatever it is that you're seeing wrong with what you're seeing.
mm.
Do you know what I mean?
I hear you, brother. Um, Gary, I want to take a moment to acknowledge you. I want to acknowledge you for the great man you are, the great husband, the great dad, the great coach, mentor, but more importantly, the amazing human being you are. The one thing that's really resonated with me from our conversation today is what it truly means to have an open mind. There's the like just being around you, even though this is a virtual conversation, just feeling your energy and how open you are to new and different ways of thinking,
Mm-hmm.
of being new people, new conversations. It's enriching, brother. So I just want to thank you
Thank
for
you.
reminding me about the power of just having an open mind.
Thank you. No, no, no. I think that, again, going back to just how can we start to change things is if more of us had that open mind, and um you'd be amazed at how life changes when you do that. The opportunities that you see, the position that you could be in if you just opened your mind and just allowed those kind of thoughts and different energies to kind of be around you and enter your life. There's so many things that could change for you
Mm,
personally.
absolutely. So, folks, Coach Gary dropped so many valuable nuggets of wisdom that will not only help you succeed in sport, but more importantly, in the game of life. But as I like to remind you every week in the huddle, knowledge is potential power. It's a consistent and focused application of great knowledge that actually creates greater results in your life. So, my challenge to you is to take one of these valuable nuggets of wisdom and go apply it to your life today. And as I like to remind you every week in the huddle, you are deserving of greatness. You are worthy of greatness. You are greatness. And my only ask from these conversations, if it resonated with you, if it touched your heart, then please share it with a friend, a loved one, a teammate, just someone that you think would benefit from listening to these positive, inspiring, and empowering ideas. The more people we have listening, understanding, and applying these simple principles to their life, the more blessed this world will be. As always, love having these conversations with you in the huddle. Have a blessed rest of your day.